Hello, everyone. Do you want to play a game? A game that will make you a believer in the paranormal? Then you need to listen to the podcast of Ghosts That Hunt Back. You will hear true ghosts, Bigfoot, and UFO stories told by people who have experienced these paranormal events. Oh, and you will mostly hear this lovely, sometimes titillating robotic voice. The creator uses this robotic voice due to a stroke, but that voice makes old Billy here sit up real straight every time I hear it. Anyway, join in now and subscribe to Ghost That Hunt Back on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and join the podcast to hear all the true and wild stories. The choice is yours. No, you know the choice is always mine.
Hey, it's George here to help out Tom, right? Yeah, Tom. See, Tom's a good guy. Tom is the guy behind Ghosts That Hunt Back. And, well, you can support him by picking up a t-shirt.
A good guy indeed, alright. And you'll find a link to the magnificent Ghosts That Hunt Back in the description.
Wait a second. He got you guys to help out as well. I thought I was the voice for this, no? Yeah, well, you thought wrong.
Yep. He even bagged Bobby De Niro for this.
So what's the matter with you? Who are you calling Bobby?
I
am Robert De Niro. Do you understand me?
Of course, accept my sincere apologies. Robert De Niro.
Yeah, hey, ego's aside here. Listen, this guy is a good guy. Exactly, and as said, you can support him by picking up a t-shirt.
What's the good word, YouTube? I am truly touched by the outpouring of support on the last Bigfoot video about my strokes. You don't know how much that means to me and inspires me to work harder in speech therapy so I can terminate this robot voice. Thank you. I hope you enjoy music with this video, but if you prefer stories instead of music, let me know in the comments. If you would like an example, click on video in the pinned comment in the comments of this video. Again, thank you for the support and your inspiration. Alright, music, take it away. What's the good word, YouTube? Thank you for the supportive messages about the need of having this robot voice due to my strokes. One message suggested using a bit of my voice to see how I progress, and I will do that when I can form a few words. Alright, let's get into some Bigfoot stories. I hope you are also liking the footage. Observed, the incident that happened to my wife and I was on May 27, 2016. I was woken up at 3 in the morning by a screaming distress sound that was coming from outside our open bedroom windows at the rear of our house. After the sound happened again, I woke my wife up wondering if our dog was left out. Then she heard the noise a couple times. I got up and went to our rear sliding door in our kitchen where we keep our dog kennel. As I left the room, my wife was startled and heard a repetitive hollow knocking sound from outside our bedroom windows, which I did not hear because I was between rooms. As I got to our dog's kennel, I startled our dog awake. I then turned on our rear outdoor lights and porch light. When I opened the slider, I heard a lot of commotion at our tree line, which is around 150 from the house. My first thought was a pack of coyotes. After listening for a few seconds, the noises escalated and the trees began to shake in 3 to 5 spread out areas of my tree line. It made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I shut the slider and went to get my shotgun. I loaded it and went out to my back deck, which is about 6 to 8 feet off the ground. At this time, my wife came out to the kitchen to listen out the window. As I was on the back deck, the noises continued. It was as if whatever was out there had no fear of me. I felt like there were multiple sets of eyes on me. As I stood there, I could hear breaking limbs, tree shaking, and what sounded like a creature with serious power. My 12 gauge felt like nothing, and I knew I better get back in the house. The noises carried on for a half hour. I decided to shut off the rear deck light because our house was dark inside and it felt like they could see us. When I walked over to shut it off, my wife, who was standing at the slider with the door partly opened about a foot, heard a heavy sound of something running towards us. She slammed the slider shut and jumped back. I've never seen a fear like this come over my wife. I then quickly opened the slider with my shotgun in hand and heard an aggressive, deep grunting sound that went off 3 times quickly. It was right beside the deck and felt like it was in my face. I slammed the slider. My wife ran to her baby's room and I could hear what sounded like a group of 3 to 5 creatures slowly heading back into the woods. I've been in the woods my whole life and know this area and wildlife well. I've never encountered anything like this. We didn't see anything. The following day we noticed some bushes pushed over at the edge of our deck and several freshly broken branches around the tree line. Also noticed, in our notes. Other witnesses, 2 of us. Time and conditions, 0300. Environment, woods and lawn. Nest story. Observed, I went to a favorite spot for the weekend to get some peace and quiet and hopefully a monster brown trout. Been going there for years fishing and camping. Not extremely remote but wild and beautiful nonetheless. It's actually an old home place that has long disappeared. Nothing remains except the concrete foundation and a narrow overgrown road that was once the driveway. Was very cold the night before, mid-20s, but the sun was shining bright and it was starting to warm up. I made the relatively short hike down the old roadbed to my spot by the river. I dropped my pack against a tree and went down the step embankment to the river's edge to check out the water and soak up some sunshine to warm up. After a few minutes I heard what I thought was another fisherman or someone up above me where the old foundation was. I thought, great, so much for peace and quiet, must be hardcore trout fishermen like me to be here in cold weather. I walked back up the embankment expecting to see people. What I saw in broad daylight, probably 30 to 40 yards directly in front of me, was what I can only describe as what appeared to be a fully erect gorilla, except his face didn't protrude out. It was flatter, and the hair was the color of a squirrel, browns, black, silver and a slight tint of red when the sun reflected off him. He was standing there, head slightly tilted back, squinting his eyes, soaking up the sunshine, just as I was. I couldn't comprehend what I was looking at first. My first thought was, what am I looking at? Second thought was, God, look how big he is. It was incredibly muscular, at least 4 feet wide at shoulders, 7 to 8 feet in height, massive animal. The skin was a dark grayish color around the face, head was extremely pointed, like a dunce hat almost, no neck, large pectorals visible under the hair. Eye color was like a shade of amber. It was squinting in the bright sun, soaking up some warmth. He didn't really see me at first, I don't think. I did kinda pop up over the embankment. I think he knew I was there but didn't really know where. He could have been trying to smell me. I watched this massive beautiful animal standing there in the bright sun for probably 15 to 20 seconds. I had a feeling of amazement, wonder and actually privileged. I knew that what I was looking at was truly one of God's immaculate creations. It was beautiful, big and scary as hell, but beautiful. Hair was clean, looked groomed almost. Very healthy animal. After 15 to 20 seconds of seeing this, I actually stepped up over the embankment all the way in view, and I said out loud something like, "Hey big boy, ain't you a pretty thing?" That's when it finally saw me. It dropped its head down and froze. I could tell I surprised it. It wouldn't make eye contact. I could see its whole posture change. It became very shy and acted like it was hoping that as long as it didn't look directly at me I wouldn't see him. It was like a bashful child. I took a few steps toward it and said, "Hey big boy," or something to that effect, and that was enough for him. He turned to his left and he was out of there. I could hear the limbs and leaves rustling as he made his getaway. He moved like a deer going up the mountain, fast. Didn't see him but I could hear him. After probably 5 seconds the rustling stopped and it was totally silent. Then I clearly hear what sounded like someone doing a drum roll with wooden sticks on a wooden table. 3 brat-tat-tat-tats, very quick, very clear, definitely not a woodpecker. No doubt in my mind it was him. He had traversed the mountainside and was on the ridgeline above me in no more than 5 to 10 seconds. Unbelievable. I never felt threatened, never felt afraid. Was a feeling of privilege and respect. I set up camp and stayed at that spot for the night and all the next day but never saw it again. Spent most of my life in those mountains walking feeder creeks, backpacking, fishing for brook trout. Thought I knew all there was to know. That day changed my life. Made me not only question my sanity and eyesight, I'm not crazy and have 20/20 vision, but my understanding of the natural world. I've been back several times but haven't seen him. Also noticed, no smells, so sounds other than the drumming. Other witnesses, no. Other stories, heard a few but never believed anyone. Time and conditions, 12:13 p.m. full sun. Environment, mountains, river. Next story. Observed, at approximately 7 p.m. on Wednesday, November 16th, John E., Dan F., Dan W. and James O. and I met at my house to watch a Philadelphia 76ers game. While watching, Dan F. noticed a human-like creature walking in the street in front of my house. From the living room window, we all observed a creature which appeared to be just under 6 feet tall walking away from my house. The creature was about 150 feet away and passed under a street light, which gave us the ability to get a decent look at it. It was long-limbed, but clearly not human. Because of the lighting it was in silhouette, but we could see that it was covered with hair. It was walking with its shoulders hunched forward, and did not appear to be in any distress. We watched it pass from view as it went behind trees and into the woods on the far side of the street. I live in a quiet neighborhood that is located in a wooded area. My house is on a street that is a cul-de-sac, and there is very little traffic. There is a quarry less than a quarter-mile away through the woods. In the 14 years that I have owned this house, I have routinely heard animal calls that can't be identified as dog barks, etc., and have seen droppings and footprints in the woods that have not been from any animal such as a deer, etc., that would be seen in this area. This is the first instance in which I have seen a creature that I believe is a Bigfoot. Because we were all shocked by what we saw, we did not attempt to pursue this creature, but we were able to observe it for 5 to 7 seconds before it passed from view. In the minutes that followed, we all discussed what we saw. While my friends, who do not live in this neighborhood, were initially reluctant to acknowledge that it was a Bigfoot, after I explained the things that I have heard and seen around my house over the years, we all agreed that the creature was not human, and clearly fit the description of a Bigfoot. Please contact me so I can provide further information about this sighting. Also noticed, please see reports. Other witnesses, 5 witnesses, we were watching TV. Other stories, I am not aware of any other incidents in this area. Time and conditions, approximately 7 p.m., dark and clear. Next story. Location details, Blackstone Gap area, northwest of Nordegg, Alberta. 1.5 miles north of Old Trapper's Cabin. Nearest town, Nordegg. Nearest road, Forestry Trunk Road. Observed, we were out bow hunting in the Blackstone Gap area northwest of Nordegg, Alberta, and had something happen I can't really explain. We set up camp about 9:30 Friday night Sept 9, 2016 and started a fire to cook dinner. We hear noises coming from the tree line about 25 yards away and got out the shotguns figuring it might be a bear. After about a half hour of hearing something moving in the bush, my buddy fired a round into the air to try to scare it off. Not 20 seconds later a rock the size of a soccer ball came flying out of the bush and landed beside us, and a tree started to shake violently back and forth and another rock came out of the bush at us. This went on for a good 20 minutes with 17 rocks being thrown. We packed up camp and left. I've hunted all my life and I know bears can shake trees but they can't throw rocks 25 yards. I don't know if I should report this here or not, but I'm trying to figure out what the hell happened that night. It scared two experienced hunters and made me not want to return to one of my favorite spots to hunt. Also noticed, just something moving in the bush, then rocks being thrown. Other witnesses, two building a fire to cook dinner. Other stories, no. Time and conditions, 9:30 p.m. It was dark and there were clouds and showers. Environment, foothills, spruce forest mixed with popular trees. Next story. Observed, location, Nashport, Ohio, near Dillon State Park. This is an account of events that transpired during mine and my friend's 5-day hunting trip on a 40-acre tract in Nashport, Ohio, in Muskingum County. This land adjoins Dillon State Park, which is 2,285 acres of state ground. Both my friend and I are experienced woodsmen and hunters, in having been in nature our whole lives. We are confident in our knowledge of animals, their behavior, and calls. This compiling of events at times left us confused, awestruck and at a loss for words. We both went into the woods with the understanding that there are some things that cannot be explained or fully understood yet. However, we left our trip with a much greater understanding than we thought imaginable when planning this trip. December 1, 2015, Tuesday. Just after dusk. Light rain and no wind. We heard a large tree knocked over in the woods. There was no wind or outside influence that should have caused the tree to crash down. About 30 to 45 minutes later, we heard a second tree fall, which sounded larger. Around 8 p.m. we began to hear tree knocks coming from 3 different locations simultaneously. The first 2 sounded like someone hitting 2x4s together. The third, on the other hand, was much louder. It sounded like someone hit the tree with a very large Louisville slugger. Around 10 p.m., we heard what sounded like someone walking through the woods whistling. It was a human-like whistle, but we were the only people around. At about 3 a.m., my friend stepped out of the camper to use the bathroom. Upon walking outside, he heard another loud tree knock from the third location as before. December 2, 2015, Wednesday. We hunted all day and returned to camp. After dark, the tree knocks began. This time it was only 2 locations. Around 10 to 10:30 p.m. we began to hear whooping sounds coming off of a ridge about a 1/4 of a mile away. Still inside the camper, the sounds were so loud we could feel them. The whoops lasted 15 to 20 seconds without pause. Within 5 minutes we heard the call again, but this time the duration of the call was shorter. We stepped outside of the camper to get a better sound quality and then heard a third set of whoops, this time so loud the calls could be felt in your chest. When these calls were finally finished, the woods and entire area around us went quiet. Not a sound. Just as the night before, we continued to hear wood knocks. Also noted we could hear something banging/beating on cars in the junkyard below our campsite. At times it was so loud whatever this was seemed to be upset and trying to rip off a car door. The junkyard is inaccessible at night. Just as the night before, my friend awoke around 3 a.m. to use the bathroom and upon stepping out of the camper was confronted with a very loud knock from the same area as the night before. December 3, 2015, Thursday. The evening was quiet until about 9 to 9:30 p.m. Out of the blue, we heard a very long, very deep, aggressive, almost Tarzan-like yell coming from the same ridge as the whoops the night before. This brought a chill down our spines, it was so loud. It was long and powerful and lasted a solid 20 seconds. Trees knocks continued from the same areas as previous nights, almost like we were being observed all evening. They were lesser in frequency on this evening, however. About an hour later we began to hear coyotes yipping near the same ridge as all the calls have been coming from. There was an answer to the coyotes, which was similar but definitely not a coyote. The tone and pitch were different and it was much louder. It was very bone-chilling to say the least. Shortly after this we could hear growling sounding like it was coming from just outside the camper. We loaded our guns and prepared for an encounter with whatever was out there. We stepped out with a bright flashlight but we could not spot anything. The tree knocks continued until we went to bed. December 4, 2015, Friday. Sitting around the fire around 9 p.m., we heard another Tarzan yell. This time it was on a further ridge. Guessing around a half to 3/4 of a mile away. It was long and as loud of a call as the evening before, just further off in the distance. It was quiet again until about 9:45. From the lake and waterway about a 1/4 to half mile away, we heard a blood-curdling high-pitched scream. Also by the waterway is a long set of railroad tracks that I wanted to note up here. From this point on we heard screams every 5 seconds. The screams progressively came closer and closer, moving down the creek bottom between the 2 large ridges. In no more than 30 to 60 seconds, the screaming had moved from the waterway again about a 1/4 to half a mile away to what sounded like 100 to 150 yards away at the tree line. About 10 to 15 seconds later we heard what sounded like someone or something jumping on the hood of a car and over the 8 feet tall, give or take, junkyard fence, clipping it as it went over. This was astonishing because in this 10 to 15 seconds of time this thing moved through 400 yards of heavy cover. I do not know of any person or animal that could do this that would also be responsible for these noises. A few minutes after all of this commotion, we heard the same blood-curdling screams coming off the ridge behind us as all of the screams as the nights before. December 5, 2015 Saturday. We set up a 2-man deer drive for the morning down the same ridges and holler from where the screams the night before were moving through. Moving as quickly as possible, it still took me an hour to cover and navigate the same ground as the high-pitched screaming the night before. We decided to check out the area around the waterway for tracks to try and confirm what we thought we had been hearing throughout the week. At one end of the spillway, the water had receded to depths of only about 4 inches. There were nearly 20 tracks coming from the main ravine and railroad tracks and into the shallow end of the spillway. They all enter at the same place but veer off in 3 different directions. The tracks appeared to be 14 to 16 inches in length, 3 to 4 inches at the heel and 6 to 8 inches at the toe. This creature appeared to have a stride of nearly or about 5 feet toe to toe. My friend documented these as pictures on his cell phone. Upon further investigation we found more tracks 20 to 30 yards away in the sand on the bank. We took pictures of these as well. One set was slightly smaller but went up next to my 11.5 size hunting boot. It dwarfed my feet in comparison. We found another, larger track near these. This footprint was 16 to 18 inches long, at least 4 inches at the heel and 8 inches or more at the toes. It was an older track but still stood out to us. We have a clear picture of this track up against my friend's size 13 hunting boot and this track just swallowed it. These impressions sunk deeper than anything my friend or myself could recreate, and we are not small men at 210 and 185 pounds respectively. Investigating the bank line we could see multiple shellfish that had been eaten, potential secondary food source to all of the gut piles and wounded deer from gun season. There were no other animal tracks in the area that would have been known to be feeding on these, aka raccoons. Also noted, we noticed multiple footprints that looked to be from a child barefoot. These looked fresh. Why someone would let their child run around barefoot in December in cold water and mud is beyond me. Still not sure what to make of this. December 6, 2015 Monday. Upon returning home I spoke to my girlfriend about what had gone on during our hunting trip and finding the tracks, and she was mind blown and interested. Since the tracks were on public land and deer gun season was over, I know it would be safe to take her down to the water and show her the tracks and let her see the area. First I took her down to a sandbar to show her an angle I had at a nice deer on Wednesday. When we got down there she said, "Wow, Bigfoot." When we looked down there was a fresh set of tracks in the 14 to 16 inch range, very similar to the other ones noted already. They were so fresh you could see where the mud had squished up between its toes. She took pictures on her phone with her feet next to them as reference. I then took her over to the sandy bank and showed her the tracks my friend and I had found to get a second set of pictures. Upon getting over there we found another type of track. It was roughly 14 inches in length but appeared to have severe hammer toe and or arthritis. It was roughly 4 inches at the heel and roughly 8 inches at the toes. We took pictures of this track as well. When exploring near the wood line I noticed how a very large creature had been moving through there. I found a large impression in the leaves. I began to remove them to get a better look at what was below. We found what appears to be very large footprints. These were between 20 and 24 inches in length, well over 5 inches at the heel, and 10 to 12 inches at the toe. A picture was also taken of this impression. Upon seeing these the feeling of being watched began to overwhelm my girlfriend and we quietly left the area. At the end of this trip we left with some astounding experiences and a sense of shock. However, we both feel this is not a series of coincidences or random actions. Given our encounters and physical evidence which we were able to document, we strongly feel there is one explanation: Bigfoot. Being experienced trackers, we feel these creatures are using the railroad tracks as a highway to come and go with minimal trace. Our interactions this week led 2 outdoorsmen who are very comfortable in uninhabited woods to sleep with loaded guns within arm's reach. Each of us there will think twice before staying or wandering near or in nearly untouched woods at night alone. Although we did not get a visual, we fully believe this creature is large, athletic and completely in its element in the woods at dark. Also noticed, we have pictures to coincide with prints left in the creek bottom. Other witnesses: 3 myself, my friend Kyle and my girlfriend, Erica. Time and conditions, see above account. Environment: woods, creek bottom, ravines.
The best Sasquatch evidence. Bigfoot has been spotted for years, but is there evidence? North America has its own monster. While Scotland has its Loch Ness sea serpent and the Himalayas has its abominable snowman or Yeti, North America lays claim to Sasquatch or, as he has been nicknamed, Bigfoot. Sasquatch, a 7 to 8 foot tall man/ape, has been sighted in North America for centuries. Before the European invasion, Native Americans were very familiar with this hairy giant that lived in the wilderness. One of the earliest recorded sightings of Sasquatch by a white man occurred in 1811 near what is now Jasper, Alberta by a fur trader named David Thompson. Since then there have been many sightings of the creature in western Canada, and in many states of the U.S., especially the Pacific Northwest Ohio, and even as far south as Florida, where the swamp-dwelling beast is known as the skunk ape. Is Sasquatch mere legend or a remarkably elusive reality? What's the evidence? Personal accounts of sightings are plentiful and deserve weight because of their numbers. Physical evidence, such as footprints and hair samples, is rarer, and recordings on film and video rarer still. Here's a look at some of the best, and always controversial, evidence for the existence of Sasquatch. Footprints. He isn't called Bigfoot for nothing. There have been more than 900 footprints attributed to Bigfoot collected over the years, having an average length of 15.6 inches. The average width is 7.2 inches. That's one big foot. By comparison, the foot of a 7-foot, 3-inch basketball player, a rarity, to say the least, is 16.5 inches long but only 5.5 inches wide. Through 1958 and 1959, Bob Titmus and others found numerous Bigfoot tracks in the area of Bluff Creek where the famous Patterson/Gimlin film was shot several years later. In 1988, wildlife biologist John Bindernagel of Vancouver Island found massive footprints in the snow and heard a hoo-hoo-oop call in the woods. His evidence includes 16-inch, human-like footprints found in Strathcona Provincial Park while hiking. In addition, Bindernagel said he heard a strange, ape-like call at a friend's cabin near Comox Lake in 1992. Bindernagel said he knows of no other creature in North America that makes such a call, and he believes it was a Sasquatch trying to communicate with its own kind. Dwellings and graves. Although by no means verified or authenticated, there have been claims of discoveries of Sasquatch dwellings and even burial sites. Dallas Gilbert says he has had several encounters with Bigfoot, but his most controversial claim is for that of a possible Bigfoot community and burial site. Gilbert's story is weakened by his reluctance to disclose the exact location of the site. However, he has told the Daily Times of Portsmouth, Ohio, there are places where you can see territorial markings and snaps that the creature has made in the trees. There are even canopies and boughs made of trees for him to sleep under. The burial site is marked by a stone, according to Gilbert. It looks like a tombstone almost, Gilbert said. You can see the outlines of the creature's eyes, head, and his teeth. No corpses or other remains have been recovered from the area, so all we have is Gilbert's word on these claims. In 1995, Terry Enders and two friends were researching an area known for Bigfoot sightings for a local cable TV show. They chanced upon a large, dome-shaped structure constructed of branches and brush. It was large enough for 3 full-grown men to sit in and was obviously not a natural occurrence. Sounds. Not many people have heard the lonely, chilling cries and howls of Bigfoot. But those who have, and know the sounds of the wilderness, say it's an unforgettable sound like no other. Outdoorsman Bill Monroe, a writer for the Portland Oregonian, recounted his experience in an article for the newspaper. Monroe was elk hunting when the stillness of the late afternoon was broken by an eerie sound. The deafening screaming, choking, belching moan from the ridge was chilling. He wrote, "The kind of scream that sends mothers scurrying to find their children. The kind of scream no cougar or bear could ever squeeze from their throat. Unless it was their last. Piercing, echoing, guttural, a single, horrible high-pitched yet throaty, inhuman, unnatural creation of Steven Spielberg that makes your skin crawl." In 1984, Bruce Hoffman was prospecting for gold near the Clackamas River. He told investigator Greg Long this story: "I had to park a couple hundred feet from the river, and I had to walk a little ways back towards the small stream that was running into the river. And just before I got to the small tributary, I would say from 1/8 of a mile to 1/4 of a mile away, down in the woods I started hearing this yell, or call. The sound had a bass tone, a muscular sound to it, and the sound got loud. You could hear how it went up through the trees and up to the sky. The sound traveled about 3 to 4 miles to the ridge of the mountains. You could hear the sound hit the mountain." Smells. Invariably, the sighting of a Sasquatch is accompanied by a very strong, very foul odor. In June 1988, Sean Fries was camping on the North Fork of California's Feather River. I climbed into my tent and lay down on my bedroll. I let my dogs run around because they always stay close to camp. I started to doze off when suddenly I woke up. It was dead quiet, no crickets, nothing, and my dogs came running into my tent shaking. I grabbed my rifle and flashlight and stepped outside the tent. I couldn't see anything, but I had that sensation of being watched. Then I heard some very heavy footsteps right behind me in the trees. There was also a very strange odor, almost like a cross between a skunk and something dead. This thing circled my campsite all night long. Sightings. There is no shortage of Bigfoot sightings, some being more compelling than others and sounding more authentic. Here are some examples, from experienced outdoors people, that lend credence to the legend. Clayton Mack, a Native American of the Nuxalk Nation, knows the Canadian wilderness and its creatures as well as any man alive. A reputable grizzly bear hunter for 53 years, Mack relates this tale. I was fishing in Guatemala all by myself in August. I had a 30-foot boat with a single-cylinder engine. I got to Jacobson Bay, about 15 miles from Bella Coola, when I saw something on the edge of the water. It was kneeling down and I could see his back humping up on the beach. It looked like he was lifting up rocks or maybe digging clams. But there were no clams there. I turned the boat right in toward him. I wanted to find out what it was. For a while there, I thought it was a grizzly bear, kind of light color fur on the back of his neck like a light brown. I nosed right in toward him to almost 75 yards to get a good look. He stood up on his hind feet, straight up like a man, and I looked at it. He was looking at me. Gee, it don't look like a bear, it has arms like a human being, it had legs like a human being, and it got a head like us. I keep on going in toward him. He started to walk away from me, walking like a man on two legs. He was about 8 feet high. He got to some drift logs, stopped and looked back at me. He looked over his shoulder to see me. Grizzly bear don't do that. I never see a grizz run on its hind legs like that, and I never see a grizzly bear look over his shoulder like that. I was right close to the beach now. He stepped up on those drift logs and walked into the timber. Stepped on them logs like a man do. I watched as he went a little higher up the hill. The wind blew me in toward the beach, so I backed up the boat and keep on going to Guatemala Bay. In 1995, Paul Freeman, a veteran Bigfoot hunter, Bill Loggery, a former game warden, followed the sound of odd screams that were heard in the Blue Mountains of southeast Washington state. Joined by Wes Summerlin, a local resident, they hiked to an area where Bigfoot tracks had been found. In a clearing, the men found several small trees twisted, broken, and dripping sap. Caught on the trees were large clumps of long black and brown hair. See below. They caught sight of a 7-foot ape-like creature and heard the screams of 2 others. They observed the creature through binoculars at a distance of 90 feet, eating yellow wood violets. The trackers also found droppings 2 to 5 inches long, full of half-eaten carpenter ants, and fallen trees that had been pulled apart for the ants inside. Hair samples. Tufts and strands of hair thought to come from Sasquatch have not added to the weight of evidence for the reality of the creature. Most hair samples tested proved to be that of bears or other non-primates. Promising samples were obtained in 1995 by Freeman, Lockery, and Summerlin. The hair samples gathered by the 3 men were sent to Ohio State University for DNA analysis. Dr. W. Henner Farnbach determined microscopically that the hair appeared to have come from 2 individuals of the same species, that it differed in color, length, and hair growth cycle between the 2 sets, had not been cut, and was indistinguishable from human hair by any criterion. Ultimately, the tests were inconclusive. The researchers said that the DNA extracted from both hair shaft or roots, hair demonstrably fresh, was too fragmented to permit gene sequencing. Photos and video. Photos, film footage, and video of Sasquatch are extremely rare. At worst, they are murky, fuzzy, and inconclusive. At best, when they are clear, they are highly controversial and suspected of being hoaxes. The Patterson/Gimlin film is by far the most famous and most scrutinized footage ever taken of Bigfoot. Roger Patterson and Robert Gimlin shot the footage in 1967 with a 16mm camera while on an expedition to find the elusive creature in the Bluff Creek area of the Six Rivers National Forest in Northern California. Large footprints had been found in this region in previous years. Debate among various experts over the authenticity of the film has been ongoing for 30 years. In recent years, some people have come forward to claim that they participated in the hoaxing of the film, but even their testimony has been called into question. See no. Bigfoot is not dead. In September 1998, David Shealy took 27 photographs of the 7-foot-tall creature in the Everglades. I had been sitting up in the tree for about 2 hours every night for the past 8 months, Shealy said. I dozed off for a little while, and when I woke up, I saw it coming straight at me. At first, I thought it was a man, but then I realized it was the skunk ape. Shealy followed the tracks of the animal and made what he said could be the biggest skunk ape discovery. Small footprints he says appear to be from a baby skunk ape. Shealy now estimates there are between 9 and 12 skunk apes roaming the Everglades and said most people who have spotted the creature usually see them in groups of 3 or 4. Contact. There are very few cases of close contact or physical contact with Sasquatch, and many that have been reported are quite suspect. Stan Johnson claims to be one such contactee. Stan says he first met the 7-foot-tall wild man when he was a boy near his home in the Ozarks. Every day after school, Stan says he would meet the Sasquatch in the woods and talk with him. Since then, he's had several other encounters and believes the creature comes from another dimension. Johnson's is a strange story.